Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm from Minnesota. And yes, I'm obese. A lot of people are, and I want to talk today about the stigma of obese people, bigger people like me, mental disabilities like autism, Down syndrome, ADHD, mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, and the negative stigma of physical disabilities. Now, my weight problem started since I was a little girl. I was always bigger than the rest of the kids in my grade or class. I tried so many things to lose weight and I'm trying so hard right now by eating less, by exercising more, going on the treadmill, walking my dogs. But there's something else that prevents me, actually two things that make it hard for me to lose weight. First, I have binge eating disorder, which means binge eating is when you eat a large quantity of food in a short amount of time. So that means a whole batch of cookies in 1 hour. That means a whole bag of chips in 10 minutes. Now put that on top of a genetic condition that I have, Bardet-Biedl syndrome, which I'm not going to say much about, but if you want to learn more, I will tell you how it's spelled in the comment section. Bardet-Biedl syndrome, or BBS, is a genetic condition that makes it hard for me to know when I'm hungry and when I'm full. So, like for me, I feel like I'm always hungry. And for a lot of people with BBS, it's the same way. There are other things for BBS, but I'll let you check it out for yourself. But because I can't sense when I'm full, on top of that with the eating disorder, the binge eating disorder, that makes it hard for me to lose weight. Now, when I eat too much and feel uncomfortably full, then I can feel it. Like, let's say, eating a heavy Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner. That's the only time I feel full. Now, there's also another genetic condition that's called Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a lot like BBS or Bardet-Biedl syndrome. But PWS, well, BBS is genetically transferred. So my mom has one gene with the mutation, my dad has another gene with a mutation, and I have a brother with autism but he has BBS as well. Prader-Willi syndrome, or PWS, is just, it's not passed down. It's just a genetic mutation right in that offspring, but it's not passed on. So that's, I believe, the only difference, what I can tell, from BBS and PWS. Now, I made this video to talk about the stigma of that thinner, smaller people have of bigger people, or what you call fatter. Now, I do not like to use the term fat because it just puts on a negative stigma. I mean, if you call someone fat, it's like a swear word to us. It's like the controversy of the Redskins, the Washington, D.C. Redskins name. It is not, it offends the Native Americans. Fat, well, it offends me and probably a lot of other people who are bigger. One thing that made me want to do this video is hearing one news story, one of several news stories on people and their obsession with pointing out the weight issues. It was on Halloween this year, 2013, and I was watching the news when I heard about this lady in North Dakota handing out a letter to every kid she thought was obese, telling their parents they shouldn't get candy, they should eat better, they should get more active, and to all the other kids, she was handing out candy, those kids who weren't obese. This got me really angry. I started yelling at the TV. Now, you would think that you'd only yell at, let's say, your games, like your football, baseball, basketball. But I was yelling because of that story. Here's why. First of all, if she wasn't a doctor, it's not her say to say whether that kid was obese or not. Secondly, what if that kid is this close to an eating disorder, like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, or other eating disorders? She could have just pushed them over the edge. I mean, that just lowers the self-esteem level of so many kids. We don't need to have the perfect body, the Barbie girl plastic model size 0 body. A lot of the models are photoshopped. And I just think it's wrong that we are putting all of our attention on on the perfect body. Everybody's body is different. And everyone's metabolism is different. Thirdly, what if that family is trying to work with the kid on getting them more active or trying to lose weight? They're already doing that. And you just put that child's you just made that child's self-esteem one level lower because of that letter. Because it points out their huge flaw that they already feel self-conscious about. And guess what? If that was me getting the letter, I would just isolate myself. And if I could get to the food, or I'd even binge on the candy. Because that mentally just does something to the child, saying they're not good enough when they are. That's just wrong. And last of all, it was Halloween, for goodness sakes. Why did you have to pass out that letter on Halloween? It's one night of the year, and maybe the parents are already going to portion the candy out. So that letter just sparked anger in me. Now, many of you probably remember the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch saying bigger people aren't beautiful, or bigger people aren't beautiful enough to wear the clothes. Let me tell you something. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's not up to some CEO of some clothing company to say that bigger people aren't beautiful enough to wear the clothes. I mean, and yes, it might cost you more money to make bigger clothes because you need more material, you need more thread. But guess what? You're losing profits because not everyone is a size 0. Okay? I'm definitely not a size 0. Okay? The average woman is bigger than a size 0. Sometimes just a size 12. You really think that's not beautiful? And the thing is, bigger people, like myself, already have a hard enough time trying to find clothes. We can't go into Gap. We can't go into Kohl's because they just don't have our sizes. They only go up to maybe extra large. Okay? I'm at least a 3X. I have to go to a place like Lane Bryant or the plus size section of Fashion Bug, which clothes are, yes, more expensive because they have to use more materials, but that's where I have to go. I also just wish there was more options for bigger people like me, because we like to be fashionable too. Okay? We're not slobs. We're not lazy. We are just normal people, like everyone else. Is that so hard to understand? Another thing. The latest issue of Time magazine has pictured a picture of Governor Christie and says the elephant in the room. Now, Time might have been trying to say the Republican is back in the governor's seat. Republican Chris Christie. But I think when I see that title, I just think of the stigma, the negative stigma that weight has been given. I mean, you call a person an elephant? If you called me that, I think you'd be referring to my size, which I would definitely be offended, and I'm offended at that title. Now, people who are bigger are just normal people who are trying to fit in. You don't know if they have a genetic condition that makes it hard for them to know when they're full, or an eating disorder like bulimia or binge eating disorder. And if you offend someone who has an eating disorder like me, well, we just turn to food. Now, I'm just a normal person, like everyone else. I may have some difficulty because of my weight, but I love a lot of the same interests that other people like. Like, for example, I love taking pictures. I love making cards. All different kinds of cards. I love music. I was in orchestra since 4th grade. Now, I haven't picked up my violin in a while, so don't ask me to play anything. Besides, it's out of tune. But I was in orchestra. I also have played piano since I was 4. I've been in many piano contests. I love to read, especially Jodi Picoult and Mary Higgins Clark. I did karate. And guess what? I'm a first-degree black belt. So if you try to offend me, I can whoop your butt. I also love other art, like drawing, even though sometimes I'm not good at it. I also love to paint. And write. I have done speech in the past, which is why I can do this video out of the air with just bullet points. So I have a lot of the same interests as other people do. I love my dogs. I mean, I have 3 wonderful, sometimes stubborn, poodles. And they love me for who I am. They love anyone who comes up and pets them and gives them treats. So sometimes I feel like they have an eating disorder too. Because I feel like all they think about is sleep and food. I love them dearly. And if people could learn to love someone for who they are, rather than what they look like dogs can, or other animals can love you for who you are, then the world wouldn't be so discriminatory against bigger people, or people with mental disabilities, physical disabilities, or mental illness. Now, I also want to talk about the stigma of autism, Down syndrome, ADD, and other mental disabilities. Yes, people with these disabilities might be different than you or I. They might think differently. They might take longer to get something across. For example, me, I sometimes have a hard time communicating what's on my mind. So if you have noticed that I take a lot of pauses, it's because I have slow processing speed, which means I'm not dumb. Okay, I have an IQ right up there with the average person, but it just takes me longer to find the words that I want to find. And my brother, for instance, who has autism, yes, he may seem weird to people, but he's just another normal person to me. Okay? I can see past his autism and see my brother. A brother who's sometimes obsessed with washing his hands. But that's just some of his quirks that you just learn to deal with. You might meet people who have ADD, who they might talk about one thing one moment and then go off track the next moment. Guess what? We sometimes all do that. You might also have someone with Down syndrome. I guess what I'm trying to say is all these kids, adults, people, they all are trying to fit in. And if we all just take a moment and look past their disability, we can see the people who they are on the inside. They're caring, they're loving, they maybe sometimes get on our nerves, like my brother does sometimes. But they're normal people. They're just what I like to say and what my mom likes to say, wired differently. The next stigma I want to talk about is physical disabilities. Now, because of my weight, it is harder for me to climb upstairs and go for longer distances. But on top of that, I also have gross motor issues, which means, for example, if I have to go up a curb, I need someone to hold my hand to help me up, or something to hold on to. There are other disabilities. I was in a wheelchair for 6 months in my 10th grade year. And I remember what it was like for kids in a wheelchair. I was trying to get through the hallways, and you'd be trying to go through, and someone would be in your way and you can't go around them. You accidentally bump into them, and they look at you saying, well, you're in my way. If we could all just keep an eye out for people with physical disabilities and just accept them for who they are. I'm saying accept them for who they are inside, but also just embrace the fact that there might be some things that are more difficult for them than others. I remember the next year, my 11th grade year, I did a public policy project with a partner, and we did the handicapped accessibility at our school. And that's a huge deal, because it's not only kids in wheelchairs or walkers, but some kids that they might have other physical disabilities. I don't know if it was my public policy project with my partner who that changed some of the things in the school, but my senior year, there was only one handicapped bathroom on the top level. And it was at one end of the building. So if you have a class at the other end and have to use that bathroom in a 7-minute passing time, good luck trying to get to class on time. So when I came to my senior year, I noticed that they made another bathroom handicapped accessible. Now, ADA requires only one handicapped bathroom on the second level, just at least one. Well, when you have a large school like where I went to, and you only have a 7-minute passing time, and there's only one handicapped bathroom, and it's like, I'm exaggerating, but like 5 miles away, you can't go that far because you have to maneuver yourself into the bathroom. And then for me, I had to lock my wheelchair, pivot myself, and it would take maybe a few minutes. It would take longer for me because I had to move from a wheelchair to the toilet and back again. Plus, I would have to figure out how to maneuver my wheelchair so I could get out of the stall. So, if we could just embrace people with their physical disabilities, that would be wonderful. I mean, I'm going back to my dogs. They didn't mind that I was in a wheelchair. I mean, I have 3, and the youngest one, he was a little daredevil. He'd run through the spokes of my wheelchair, and I would have him standing on my lap in the wheelchair, and I'd roll down, and he'd just be standing there, and he'd be going up and down the big 70-foot ramp that we had to build in our backyard. And if we were more like the dogs, or cats, or any animal, any pet that you might have, they accept people for who they are. If people treat them nicely, if they love them, they love them back unconditionally. No matter if they're in a wheelchair, or have a mental disability, or a mental illness. Which leads into my next negative stigma that I want to talk about, is mental illness. Now, mental illness covers a whole variety of mental issues, like anxiety, high anxiety. Yes, you may get anxious before a test. Yes, you may get anxious before an interview. But, like for me, I sometimes have anxiety issues, in which I get anxious about things I can't even control. Like for me, okay, here's another thing. I have a learner's permit, but I was starting to learn how to drive. But then I got too big to fit safely behind the wheel. So that means I can't go out, and unless I rely on medical transportation, a service called Metro Mobility, which is either a sedan or a bus or a friend or family member. Anyways, I get really anxious when I know I'm going to be late for a medical appointment and the medical transportation hasn't arrived, and I just get really anxious, and that causes me stress. It makes me, if there is food available, it makes me want to binge. I also have a mild form of depression, and some things might just tick me off like that, and my depression might skyrocket for a couple of days, but then go down. And people say, "Oh, you isolate? Why don't you just go out and be around people?" It's not that easy. It takes a lot of work and therapy to deal with this. It's not as easy as going out and socializing. Because, like for me, with the low self-esteem issues of my weight, I have a hard time going up to people and starting conversation because I am self-conscious. Now that doesn't tie in with depression, but depression, it's more than just isolation. So if you really want to help someone with depression, just be there for them. And if they need help, don't tell them, "Oh, you should go get help." Just mention it. Now, there's other mental illnesses out there. One of them, eating disorders. For people with anorexia, people just say, "Just eat something." Or for people like me with binge eating disorder, they just say, "Just stop eating." Or people with bulimia, just stop eating and stop purging. It doesn't work that way. And I know. If I could just stop binging and lose a lot of weight, I'd just stop today. But it's mental. It's not just a on-off switch. I can't just switch it off and say, "Nope, I'm not going to binge anymore." Now, I can do that some days, but like if I am worried or anxious, I can find ways to distract myself. But it takes a lot of just The best way I could describe an eating disorder is it is let's say you have a boyfriend and that boyfriend is abusive to you and is everyone's trying to get you away from him, but you keep going back to him because you find comfort in him or something. That's an eating disorder. If you want to help someone with an eating disorder, just be there for them. If they need to cry, let them cry. Don't say, "Oh, please don't cry," because that will just make the eating disorder worse. Recovery, it's not just me who's trying, it's not just the person who's trying to recover that is part of the recovery, the treatment, but it's everyone around them. And if I could suggest a book that I think would, well, a couple books that I think would help people without eating disorders understand, I'd suggest either Eating in the Light of the Moon or Life Without Ed. Eating disorders are more complicated than people think. And I know. I'm trying so hard. I got this eating disorder when I was in probably start of high school. Why? I just felt like people kind of were, I just felt so self-conscious about that, about myself. And I just felt sometimes, a lot of times, left out of different groups or something, or people wouldn't, or I felt invisible because people looked past me because I was bigger. I mean, yes, it would have been fun to be part of what they call a clique in middle school and high school, but you know, if I was part of a clique, I would have loved to have the ability to go out of that clique and be friends with other people. Not just that one group. That's what I don't like about stigmas of weight, of people with disabilities, whether they be physical or mental, whether they have mental illnesses, whether they have eating disorders. People tend to ignore those people, and that makes them even more depressed, or that makes them even more, that makes their eating disorder sometimes act up even more. So, if there's one thing that I want people to take away from this, is don't look at people with disabilities and judge them just by their disability, or look at people with weight issues and pass them up, because just pass them by. because you don't know what that person's gone through. And who knows? They might become your best friend, but you don't know because you're just shunting them aside. You're just saying, no, I'll never be a friend with that person. But you don't know what they've been through. Yes, they may be bigger, but they may have a genetic issue. They may have binge eating disorder. They may be trying to work on it. Now, I know this is a lengthy video, but I just had really a lot on my mind. All these people that I talk about, they all just want to be involved in something. So let them help them out by saying, hey, you want to come, like in high school, hey, you want to come do some dance? Do you want to come dance with us? Or do you want to come in our group? Or out in the real world. I want this discrimination against not only people with weight, but people with disabilities and mental illnesses to stop. Now, I know that can't happen overnight, but if we could just accept these people for who they are inside and just start, maybe one person could just start by accepting everyone that comes into their lives and make them feel welcome and appreciated. Then maybe other people will start following suit. So like I said, if there's one thing I would like for you, the viewer, to take from this video is to not discriminate. You don't know what people have been through. And you'll never know if you don't at least include them, make them their... You don't even have to be friends with them, but just learn about maybe what their disability is. Or maybe if you see them struggling, like someone who struggles getting up the step, maybe just helping them. And I'm not talking about just people with disabilities, maybe elderlies. Just being there and actually helping them if you see they need it. So, if we could just stop the discrimination against other people and stop comparing them to, like, for people with weight issues, stop comparing them to the size 0 models. Because guess what? The average woman is not a size 0. So we need to stop this discrimination. Because if you keep discriminating against people who aren't like you, well, we might just start discriminating against people who aren't like us. And for the clothing companies, that's like Abercrombie and Fitch, who say, oh, like the CEO up there who says, oh, I don't want to make clothes for... Guess what? Then you're going to start losing business. And I'm going to use a line that Ellen DeGeneres said, Fitch, please, if you aren't going to start making clothes for bigger people, well, we just might start a boycott against buying your clothing. And then we'll see what you really think. So, thank you again for listening to this lengthy and long video, but I hope it changes your perspective on people who aren't just like you, or aren't just like the perfect model, or maybe even have the quirks that they may have. Just accept them for who they are. And if we can start doing that, this world will become a much better place, I feel. It will become a world where people don't have to be self-conscious about their weight or their disability. If we could create a world that accepts people for who they are, their interests, their talents, it would make this world a better place. Thank you again for watching this lengthy, long video, but I had a lot of stuff on my mind, and I just needed to rant, so thank you.